folks. Welcome back to the Real Men of Real Estate radio show here on KCAA Radio. This is Patrick Franz, the Note Mentor. You know, I'm your host, and I'm back with Nathan Turner, the Canadian Note Guy. I just love that name, man, because you're a guy who lives in Canada, right? Of course. Yeah. Canadian Note Guy, but you do business in the United States and you own mortgage notes all over the country, right?
Yeah, and that's a good clarification because one of the first questions I get is, "Oh, are you doing this in Canada?" No, I can't do this in Canada. The Canadian market is just different enough where it's just not possible. So all my business is in the US, and that's been that way for years. I haven't done anything in Canada for a long, long time.
And I love people, you know, they are rental guys and flip guys, and it's okay because it's what they know. And everybody's like, well, you mean you buy mortgage notes on properties that are 7 states away from you? And I'm like, no, Nathan buys notes. He lives in Canada and he owns notes in Alabama. So come on, man. That's the beauty of it, right? One of the things that attracted us to this was monthly cash flow, like we explained earlier, monthly cash flow from real estate without owning the real estate. So you don't have all the liabilities associated with being a landlord, but you're still collecting the monthly cash flow. And there's a lot of upside too that we won't even get into, guys. But mortgage note investing is literally the best investment vehicle I've ever seen in 22 years of investments. Really, it is. Nathan thinks the same way. But, you know, when someone gets into this game, Nathan, unless they already worked for mortgage companies or were underwriters or, you know, it's its own little niche, note investing. It's got its own terminologies and its own documents, and it's not like real estate, folks. So don't go thinking, well, I own 5 rental properties, so note investing is simple, I should get it. No, it's not that way. We all have to learn somewhere. There's books, there's YouTube channels, there's other people that do it and have done it longer than you that you can link up with and ask for lessons. There's coaching groups that are paid coaching groups and one-on-ones and mentorship programs and all this stuff. Take us back to what year was it that you heard what a mortgage note was when you took over that portfolio? And then how did you really get into learning all the in-depth education that is needed to be good at this?
Yeah. And that's a great place to go with this, because this is something I say all the time is this is real estate related, but it is not real estate. And you've got to be clear about that, because it is not the same thing. Just because you owned a bunch of properties, just because you flipped a bunch of properties, that doesn't mean anything. This is closer related to finance than it is to real estate. So just, you got to get your head around that, because that's very important.
I say, take your real estate hat off and put your banker's hat on. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And the reason I say that is it did take me a little while, because again, I came from a real estate background as well. So it was 2008 when we started with that portfolio. And then at my first note conference, I was doing some internet research and found, you know, that what we were doing was being described by other people. And I thought, this is amazing. And then I saw there's this conference coming up, and at that year, 2009 was in New Orleans. And I'm like, New Orleans conference. Okay. So off we went, and it was a whole new world. And this thing that I'd been doing for about a year, all of a sudden I was talking to people that knew exactly what I was talking about. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And not only did they know what I was talking about, but they knew how to do it way better than I did. And so I was able to learn from several. So when I got started in 2009, I took several classes from several different people. A lot of people, one of the coolest things about this is that there are so many ways to do it. And again, related to real estate, there's a lot of different ways you can do real estate. There are even more ways that you can do notes. And so there's a huge field where it just really comes down to preference. So having recognized that, I figured it was worth taking classes from a few different people. So I took Eddie Speed's class. I took a guy named Bob Leonetti. I took his class. Donna Bauer, fantastic lady. You know, some of these pros, especially back in the day, and most of them at that time were talking about seller finance notes, which is what I was doing. And even I remember taking Bob's class, and we spent about an hour or maybe 2 hours in his 3-day course where he talked about bad paper. I started talking about non-performing notes. I'm like, that's nuts. Who would do that? That sounds crazy. And that's the bulk of what I do today. But that, you know, that training was so key. And it's so important to make sure you know what you're doing, because there are enough different rules and enough different things you need to know that you need to know them. and you can't just fake it. You know, you need to know about county rules. You need to know about how foreclosure process works. You need to know about privacy laws. Like there are a number of things, regulations per state, licensing. Like there are a number of things that you need to understand. And that's just kind of the governmental stuff. And then the process is something totally different. And you've got to understand how the process works and who the players are and those kinds of things. So there's a fair amount of education that needs to be had before you decide this is what I want to do.
And education can be expensive in this space, I've seen.
It can.
Goodness gracious.
I had been pitched a couple of different times from a few different people where they're wanting, you know, anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000 for a mentorship program. And for myself, I didn't think it was worth it. And to be honest, back then, prices were much different when you're buying a non-performing note than they are today. It was ridiculously cheap. So I had tons of latitude to make all kinds of mistakes. And so we did, and it was a lot of learn by doing. And so I made the mistakes, and thank goodness I learned, and now I don't have to make those mistakes. But I had the room to do that. Today, there's not as much room to do that. So education is that much more important today.
It really is. It really is. And like I say, knowing is half the battle. I think that was a G.I. Joe statement. Knowing is half the battle, but it really is. And, you know, gosh, all power to them if they can get $30,000 to $50,000 to coach people on this. But I was lucky enough, you know, my mentor, Desi Arnaz, and I was lucky enough to be mentored by him. And, you know, affordable coaching is neat too, you know, affordable, but he runs the Note Investor University over at noteinvestoruniversity.com. And he teaches all this stuff, and it's really, really affordable compared to most programs. So if you guys really want to get coaching, head over to noteinvestoruniversity.com, get signed up and learn all this. And if you're not going to go full-time into note investing, maybe like Nathan or I, it's certainly something that I think that every single savvy investor out there needs to know about, right? If they're in stocks, if they own rentals, if they're house flippers, if they're making money hustling some way, maybe you own 5 barbecue shops. But look, note investing is something that everybody should have as a part of their portfolio. Okay.
Definitely.
And I think you agree. And so when you started learning about notes, Nathan, what year was that again?
2009, really.
How long did it take you really to get some mentorship from people to where your brain said, I got this, I'm pretty good, I feel like a master at it? How long did that take?
A few years, to be honest, where I felt like I could do this full time and actually profit from it enough to be able to do it full time. So probably, 2011 or 12. And, you know, several courses later and a lot of experience in that time as well, where I was, you know, doing small bites. Where I would buy 1 or 2 or 3 at a time and kind of figured out some of the strategies and some of the things they didn't cover in class.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But guys, look, I mean, it takes some time to learn. Nathan's an intelligent man, and it took him a few years to really be a master at everything that it takes to be a pro at this. But, you know, time is one thing, but we put time into a lot of things, don't we, Nathan? There's people on the listening to this show that are like, well, I've spent years doing network marketing. You know, I've spent years being a plumber. I've spent years, and we spend years doing things. And in only a few short years, if somebody really concentrates and gets into this industry, they can turn their life around financially. And there's not a lot of other things where you could say, hey, in 3, 4, 5 years time, if I get into this new thing, I could really be pretty much financially free. And so we like to say that note investing should not be confused for some sort of a get rich quick scheme, right? Absolutely. Definitely not it. No. What I like to say, Nathan, tell me if you agree with this statement. Note investing, with all the opportunities that lie within, we call it a get rich guaranteed plan. Does that sound more like it?
Yeah, that's good. With the caveat that you've done the research and you've had the education and you've got somebody that you can go to answer some questions. Yes.
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. Certainly team up with somebody who's done it, been there, failed, and can make you, hopefully prevent you from making those same mistakes over. Absolutely. Right? So let's give an idea here, Nathan, about an actual, maybe give an example of like a simple note deal that if somebody was listening to this call and they're like, listen, I'm sitting on $80,000 in my IRA. My IRA is only earning me 2%. Yeah. And let me self-direct that money. And without being in a risky situation, because they don't want to lose their retirement, but they want to maybe buy a first lien performing mortgage note and start maybe say earning 8% on that money in that IRA. What does something like that look like?
So the easiest way to do it and the safest way to do that is to invest into a fund. And get into where somebody already knows what they're doing and somebody has gone through the process, and it's a fantastic diversified fund automatically, because you're not buying one apartment building, you're not buying one commercial building, you're buying dozens of notes within that fund. So it's already automatically diversified. And one of my favorite things about it is that this is an impact investing to its core. We are absolutely helping one person at a time, individuals, to be able to stay in their homes and to be able to afford payments that they and situations even that they wouldn't have and couldn't have with a bank. We're not banks, and that's great, because I'm way more flexible than a bank, and I can do all kinds of cool things that a bank just simply cannot do. So it's a fantastic investment for that. That being said, yes, you can go out and just buy yourself a performing note for 80 grand. Gosh, I mean, it varies wildly, but you're talking about an income. Oh, I could hardly even put a number on it. Somewhere between $500 and $1,000, I would say. But
like let me leave him with this little cliffhanger. We're going to go to another commercial break here in a second. But like, guys, listen to this. If a house somewhere in the Midwest or Southeast is worth 150 grand, that's what that physical piece of real estate is worth. Okay. The person living there owes the bank 100 grand. Mm-hmm. We buy this mortgage debt at a discount as note investors. And so we go to the bank and we say, hey, they owe you 100 grand still, but over the next 20 years, it's promised payments in the future. How about I give you $75,000 cash in hand today, and you sell me that $100,000 worth of debt? So if you guys think about that, you're investing how much? You're investing $75,000. On paper, they owe you $100,000.
Yeah.
The house that acts as your collateral, right? Because if you're the bank, that physical house is not yours, it's theirs, they're homeowners, but it does act as your collateral for sort of a safety net position. And the house is worth 150,000. You're into the deal for 75. So folks, we're going to come back and tell you what things could happen to you if you buy one of these notes. What are the outcomes? And then we're going to get into, like Nathan said, if you don't want to take years to learn all of this and become an expert, maybe you invest into a fund, maybe with a guy like Nathan Turner, who's been doing this for years. You're diversified, you make a great return. You don't have to put in all the heavy lifting. You really trust someone like Nathan and his team who are experts at this. It could be really passive. You could still be in the note business. Maybe you don't have to become an ultimate expert, but we'll get into that right after this commercial break. Folks, do not go anywhere, because we're going to be right back with Nathan Turner, the Canadian note guy.